Centuries. My article over the weekend kind of roamed around, and it's titled, "Ours is the most cryptic of centuries." I was speaking with His Excellency Johann Borgstam, and he said, but Ali Khan, everything started with MH370. And that took me back to an article I wrote then, in which I quoted DeLillo, who says we are not witnessing the flow of information so much as pure spectacle or information made sacred, ritually unreadable. The small monitors of the office, home and car become a kind of idolatry here, where crowds might gather in astonishment. And indeed, since 2014, the world has become increasingly cryptic. And like Salman Rushdie, who once spent his life living under the dark shadow of an Ayatollah's fatwa, wrote, "Ours is the most cryptic of centuries, its true nature a dark secret." Let's begin in the United States. Special Counsel Robert Mueller has now delivered his report to the Attorney General. President Trump has spent most of his presidency trying to undercut this very report. Its arrival is therefore noteworthy. The Fed Chairman Powell went full on dove last week, pronouncing that there would be no rate hike in 2019. Global bond yields went into free fall after the Fed waved the white flag on policy normalization. 10-year Bund yields were at 0.03%, 10-year US yields at 2.5%, 10-year Japanese yields at minus 0.05%. Policymakers, particularly in the US, have blinked. Over in Europe, Germany printed a shocking PMI number. The euro, which had pushed higher after Powell's dovish tilt, suddenly woke up to the fact that if the US was slowing, then Europe was going to be slowing even further. And the euro was last at 113.06. The best performing currency in 2019 has been sterling, though if the world goes to hell in a handbasket, then all bets will be on the yen. The whole Brexit scenario has become a needle which appears simply impossible to thread. The Speaker, John Bercow, quite properly guillotined Theresa May's endless Groundhog Day, where she brought the same deal but for a change of an apostrophe to the vote in the House of Commons. And in fact, over the last few months, we have watched parliamentary democracy reassert itself as the prime ministership's power has dimmed. The EU, according to Tusk, has agreed to the following: agrees to an Article 50 extension until the 22nd of May if the withdrawal agreement is approved next week. Not going to happen. If not agreed next week, then extension until 12th April. Approves the Strasbourg Agreement and continues no-deal preparations. Where we go from here is anybody's guess. It is highly unlikely that the Prime Minister has a future. Sky News revealed the armed forces have activated a team in a nuclear bunker beneath the Ministry of Defence to step up preparations for a no-deal Brexit. I predicted that in fact it was the Élysée Palace and President Emmanuel Macron who now has significant veto or decider power and the ability to essentially just throw the UK off the EU train at a moment's notice. Macron says if it's no-deal Brexit, if British MPs reject the accord again. The question for investors is as follows: is the kitchen sink already priced into sterling, and therefore it remains a buy on practically any news? But what would an apocalyptic outcome look like? Last week, President Trump tweeted, after 52 years, it is time for the United States to fully recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which is of critical strategic and security importance to the state of Israel and regional stability. Carl Bildt responded, "The jungle is back. This is a catastrophic departure from the very basis of international law. The Kremlin will applaud and apply the same principle to Crimea. Beijing will applaud and apply it to South China Sea." Many years ago, when I sat for my entrance exam for Westminster School, one of the questions that I was confronted with was this: might is right. Discuss. Some of the uncertainty we're all experiencing is watching the president of the free world seemingly torching the rules-based order, thumping his chest, and as Bildt tweeted, returning us to the jungle. From a geopolitical perspective, the big popping over the radar moment happened in Christchurch, New Zealand. Jacinda Ardern, an agnostic who took her oath of office without a Bible or mention of God, a living example that to be a humanitarian you need no dogma, just compassion, love, an open heart and an open mind. Harun Rashid shattered the glass ceiling into tiny little pieces. She is the first Western leader to seek to assert narrative control over terror. The symbolism of a biker gang providing an escort to a hearse transporting the coffin of Haji Muhammad Daoud Nabi, killed in New Zealand's twin mosque attacks, to the Memorial Park Cemetery in Christchurch sums things up metaphorically and even cryptically. She vowed never to utter the name of the twin mosque gunman to deprive him of the publicity he craved. She warned social media companies, saying they are the publisher, not just the postman. The Prime Minister of New Zealand asserted narrative control and pushed back. What Don DeLillo noticed, "I used to think it was possible for an artist to alter the inner life of the culture. Now bomb makers and gunmen have taken that territory." If you want to measure a soft power leapfrog, keep an eye on the Kiwis and this remarkably sophisticated epitome of 21st century girl power, Jacinda Ardern. Finally, let us not forget the egg boy. Donations are being sought for the boy's defense and to buy more eggs, reports have said. 25th of August 2014, I wrote this piece about MH370, and in that I said the signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal was the disappearance of MH370.